Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining in. It's nice to see everybody. So today's topic is an important one, and one that I'm acutely familiar with. I have three college-age children that I'm sending off this fall, hopefully, if everything's up and running again. And something that I became very aware of when my first child went off to college, and that is that when your child turns 18, as much as they may still be your responsibility in your mind, as much as you may still be taking responsibility for them and doing things for them, from a legal standpoint, they are adults. And so this raises certain challenges for you as a parent when you are trying to get information as connected to those college-age children. So this webinar, it'll be relatively short, and really I just want to go over a few of the documents that you want to make sure you have in place for your college-age children before they head off to college, or even just children that are 18 or over, young adults, want to make sure they have in place. And like everybody else, these documents fall basically into two categories. A category that deals with the financial aspect, and a category dealing with the health aspect. So right off the bat, I would tell you, unless you have a young adult child who has assets of their own, the will is certainly not going to be our biggest concern here. If your child does not have assets that he or she owns independently, we're not really worrying about getting a will in place for an 18-year-old. But what we are worrying about is getting advance directives in place for the 18-year-old. And advance directives are documents that are going to allow you to speak for or on behalf of or gather information for that child of yours who has now reached the age of majority. When we talk about financial documents, we want to make sure that we've got a power of attorney document in place for that 18-year-old child. Why? Because if the time comes that they can't make financial decisions for themselves, God forbid there's a car accident or an illness, you want to make sure that you are empowered to make those decisions. Now, I often hear people say to me, well, that's ridiculous. I'm still paying his bills. He's living under my roof. It does not matter. In the eyes of the law, the 18-year-old individual has now reached the age of majority, and you are not, as their parent, any longer entitled to make decisions for them. So it is incredibly important that you make sure that you have some sort of a legal document in place that will allow you to make decisions for the 18-year-old. This becomes particularly important when we're dealing with children who have special needs. If you have a child who has special needs and you've taken care of him or her their whole life, when they turn 18, you are no longer legally able to make decisions for them. So it's important that you speak to somebody, and you either, if that individual has the ability to sign documents, get them to sign a power of attorney if they have capacity, and if not, you're going to have to look into guardianship possibilities. So with respect to financial decisions, the power of attorney is the gold standard. That's the document that you want to make sure you have in place. I would also tell you that by way of ease, if in fact you have a child who's going off to college, you might want to check internally with the university or the educational institution's policy, because they may have an internal document that gives you the ability to speak to them about financial matters. I know that in paying college tuition, obviously I need to have access to my children's accounts at their universities. Without either a properly executed power of attorney or some sort of an internal proxy form that gives you that authority, although you may be responsible to pay the bill, you don't have access to that account. So it's important that you work that out prior to your child going away to the university, and make sure that you can access all of the account information that you need to access so that you can make sure that the bills are paid on time and there are no holdups with respect to payments that are then going to negatively affect your college-age children in registering for subsequent classes and things. I'll tell you that it happened to me last year. There was an error on the billing page. I didn't have access directly to the billing page. It took me a day or two to get in touch with my son and get the login information, and he was delayed as a result of this from signing up for some courses. So shoemaker's children, is what they say, but had I signed up earlier for the proxy account, I would not have had a problem. I do have a power of attorney for my children, but it was not on file with the university. So the best thing when we're talking about college accounts is to find out internally if there's some sort of a parental proxy form that you can fill out. Beyond the power of attorney, which is the document that's going to give you the authority to make financial decisions for your child, we also need to consider the medical decisions. So what happens if your 18-year-old child becomes ill and somebody needs to make a medical decision for them? Or what happens if you need to access confidential medical records? How are you going to get it? Well, again, simply being the parent of your child does not necessarily give you that access. So it's important to make sure that you have a healthcare proxy document filled out that names you as the individual that is empowered to make healthcare decision in case your adult child cannot make those decisions. And I would also suggest having a HIPAA release form. So HIPAA is the Health Insurance Privacy Act that protects your private health insurance information. And without a release of that HIPAA, you don't have the ability to call and inquire about your adult child's medical situation. So let's say that you have a child who's away at school and they become ill and they require care in the school's infirmary, and you want to get information. You are going to need some sort of authority to get that information. And so you're going to want to inquire as to whether there are internal forms that should be filled out or whether you should keep your own independent forms on hand and get those sent in to the university. I think the main point of this webinar is that many people believe that as long as that child is your financial responsibility, that you are then able to access information and be privy to account information and medical information. And the truth of the matter is you're not. So once a person turns 18 in the state of New York, they have reached the age of majority. And in reaching the age of majority, as their parent, without specific legal authority, you are no longer entitled to get information with respect to their finances, their account, or their medical information. What I will tell you is our reasoning behind doing this webinar was to sort of let our clients know, hey, if you've got kids that are going off to college, let's make sure that while you're buying bedding and packing boxes and doing all of the fun shopping that you need to do, that you've got everything from a paperwork standpoint set. I'll tell you that many young people forego their estate planning because they think they just don't need it. And unfortunately, sometimes bad things happen. And when we have these estate planning documents in place, it certainly doesn't change the car accidents, the illnesses, all of the things that we worry about, but it certainly makes navigating those situations far more easy than had you not had those documents in place. So 18th birthday, in addition to getting a cake and having a party, it's a great idea to make sure that the children have advance directives in place. Liz, I see a question.
Yes, we have a question. Can the advance directives be completed before the child turns 18?
Oh, that's a great question. No, they can't. The child cannot sign legally for themselves until they turn 18. So it's almost like a switch flips. On their 17th birthday, on the last day of their 17th birthday, mom and dad are still making those decisions. Once midnight comes around and it's the next day, mom and dad are no longer empowered to make those decisions. So the documents can be prepared, but they cannot be signed until the child reaches 18 and has their 18th birthday. So that's why I made the joke about all of my kids get advance directives for their 18th birthday. These documents are available certainly through your attorney. The HIPAA form is a form that you can download from the Department of Health online. You just want to make sure also that in the situation where you're sending a college student off, that you check with the offices of the financial office and the health office at the university and get whatever internal forms they have that are going to empower you to make decisions for your adult child. Okay, Liz, I think if there are no more questions, that really takes care of it.